Welcome to the Stoic tide. Have you ever noticed this? The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop reacting, the moment you finally choose silence over chaos, something in them breaks. Not because you attacked, not because you argued, but because for the first time they can't read you, can't control you, and can't reach you. People fear many things, but nothing terrifies the ego more than the quiet you. Because your silence isn't empty. It's full of emotional intelligence, full of self-worth, full of the psychological boundaries they never expected you to hold, full of the inner clarity that tells them one thing: you no longer have access to me. This is the moment that shatters them, not the goodbye, not the argument, but the subtle shift where you stop breaking yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. Tonight, we're diving into 7 signs. You're breaking someone's ego in absolute silence, and why they can feel it in their chest long before they admit it. If this opening already hits something inside you, then your transformation has already begun. Let's begin. What breaks a person's ego first is never your ranger, not your words, not the long messages they ignore, not the late-night conversations where you try to explain yourself. It's the moment you go quiet. Quiet in a way that doesn't come from fear or defeat, but from clarity. A clarity they never expected you to reach. Your silence is not empty. It's full of everything you finally understood. Full of every truth you used to swallow. Full of every emotional boundary you should have held long ago. And when Simeon built their confidence, their control, their entire advantage on your predictability, your silence doesn't just unsettle them, it shakes the foundation of their ego. 1. Why silence hits deeper than words. Words can be argued with, twisted, discounted, ignored. But silence is untouchable. It gives them nothing to push against, no door to walk through, no weakness to exploit. Your silence creates a psychological boundary they can't cross. It says you no longer have access to my inner world. And for someone who relied on your emotional reactions to feel powerful, that realization lands harder than any confrontation. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You're not playing mind games. You simply stopped participating in the chaos they called connection. And that alone is the first fracture in their ego. 2. When you go silent, they lose control. Ego-driven people are addicted to reactions. They need your responses to confirm their importance. They need your explanations to maintain their superiority. They need your fear of losing them to feel like they're the one in control. So when the texts slow down, when the calls stop, when you no longer justify your feelings, they feel something they aren't used to feeling, powerless. Suddenly, the person they thought they understood becomes unreadable, unpredictably, untouchable. Their ego begins to starve because the fuel that lived on your attention is gone. 3. The moment you stop trying, they start panicking. This panic isn't love, it's not emotional maturity, it's not regret in the way you might want it to be. It's fear. Fear that you're no longer in control of a situation they were convinced would always benefit them. Fear that the version of you who explained, apologizes if forgiven, tried to keep the peace is disappearing. Fear that they underestimated you, and now they're paying for it. Your silence tells them, I'm not fighting for someone who doesn't value me. And nothing cracks an ego faster than realizing you're done giving them emotional access. 4. Your silence forces them to foresee the truth. As long as you're talking, they can avoid accountability. As long as you're explaining, they can pretend you're too sensitive. As long as you're reacting, they can blame you for the chaos they created. But silence removes their escape routes. Now they have no one to argue with, no one to blame shift onto, no one to gaslight into submission. Just themselves, their own words, their own actions, their own patterns. Silence is the mirror they've avoided for years. It reflects everything they didn't want to see. Their disrespect, their inconsistency, their emotional immaturity, the fact that you were the one holding everything together. Marcus Aurelius said it perfectly. Silence is a form of clarity, and your silence is showing them the truth they hoped you would never recognize. 5. When silence comes from strength, not fear, it transforms you. Here's the real shift. Your silence is not withdrawal. It's elevation. You're not disappearing. You're reclaiming your center, your peace, your emotional intelligence, your psychological boundaries. This kind of silence is not passive. It's powerful. It's intentional. It's the beginning of inner mastery. You're not walking away because you're weak. You're walking away because you finally understand that staying would cost you too much. And they can feel this shift even if you never say a word. They feel the emotional space you've created. They feel the loss of your presence. They feel the weight of your calm. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you finally chose yourself. And nothing breaks a fragile ego more than watching the person they took for granted become the person they can no longer reach. Silence doesn't just create distance. It creates visibility. Not for you. You've always seen more than you ever admitted, but for them. Because when you stop talking, explaining, defending, justifying, something powerful happens. People finally reveal who they really are. The ones who cared will show it. The ones who were using you will show it. And the ones who relied on your confusion to stay in control, they will show it fastest. Your silence becomes an X-ray, a scan, a psychological spotlight. And suddenly the truth you used to overlook becomes undeniable. One silence removes the mask they hid behind when you were present, emotionally available, open-hearted, reactive. They could hide behind charm. Excuses, half-efforts, mixed signals. They could disappear and reappear whenever it benefited them. They could pull back emotionally and watch you chase. They could use their distance as leverage because they knew you'd fill the space with your effort. But once you stop speaking, once you stop feeding the connection, once your energy no longer orbits around them, they have nothing left to hide behind. That's when the image they built for themselves begins to crack. Because their mask only works when you're too distracted by emotion to see clearly. Your silence removes that distraction. 2. When your energy shifts, their insecurity rises. They don't tell you they feel it, but they do. Suddenly, their default confidence feels shaky. Their usual emotional distance stops feeling powerful. Their I don't care attitude becomes harder to maintain because for the first time, you're not giving them anything to push against. And without your reactions, they start to question. Did I go too far? Why aren't they chasing? Are they done with me? Are they talking to someone else? Why does their silence feel so heavy? Those questions aren't about love. They're about ego. They're about losing access to the one person they thought would always respond. 3. Silence forces their intentions to reveal themselves. Here is a truth most people never accept. Real intentions are revealed when you stop giving people what they want. When the calls stop, when the texts fade, when you no longer respond instantly, when you no longer feed their ego, you'll begin to see who is genuine and who is simply dependent on your emotional labor. Watch what happens. Some will check on you with care. Some will get angry because they lost control. Some will disappear entirely, exposing that they were only there for benefits. And some will start breadcrumb you small messages. Sudden warmth, not from love, but from fear of losing their grip on you. This is why silence is so powerful. It filters your life without you lifting a finger. Only those who genuinely value you remain unaffected by your quiet. The rest crumble under the pressure of losing access to your energy. 4. They feel seen in a way they never wanted to. Ego-driven people can handle rejection. They can handle arguments. They can handle confrontation. But what they cannot handle, what terrifies them is being seen. And your silence tells them you're no longer looking at the version of them they wanted you to believe. You're looking at the real one. the insecurity behind the arrogance, the fear behind the distance, the chaos behind the calm facade, the emotional immaturity behind the mixed signals. When they feel that you see them clearly, not the performance, not the persona, they feel exposed. And that exposure cracks the ego because ego can only survive when you remain confused. 5. Silence dismantles their manipulative patterns. People who rely on emotional gains expect certain reactions from you when they pull away. You chase when they go cold. You question. When they insult you subtly, you justify yourself. When they ignore you overthink. When they disappear, you panic. But now you don't react at all. You just watch. And the moment you stop participating in the performance collapses. Ego-driven individuals don't know how to function without emotional leverage. They need your reactions the way a fire needs oxygen. When you take your oxygen back, they suffocate. Not literally, emotionally. 6. Your silence holds up a mirror they can't escape. This is the part they feel most because silence isn't punishment. It's truth. It reflects everything they didn't want to acknowledge. How poorly they treated you, how predictable their strategies were, how dependent they were on your emotional generosity, how fragile their ego actually is. Your silence says, I see the truth now, and I won't play along anymore. And that single unspoken message is enough to shake their entire inner world. Not because you hurt them, but because they finally have to face what they were without your presence. 7. Silence exposes the fact that you were the anchor, not them. This is the final revelation. When you're no longer emotional-liable, they realize something shocking. You were the stable one. You were the consistent one. You were the one holding everything together, not them. Your silence forces them to face the reality that they were never in control. Your love, your patience, your effort were the real structure of the connection. And once they lose that structure, they feel the collapse inside of themselves. Not because of your absence, but because of their own reflection. There's a moment, quiet, subtle, almost invisible, when something deep inside you clicks into place. A moment where you stop negotiating with chaos, stop rescuing people from the consequences of their own behavior. Stop shrinking yourself just to keep the peace. It doesn't come with anger. It doesn't come with tears. It comes with clarity. And clarity, when it finally arrives, is louder than any argument you could ever make. This is the moment the ego on the other side begins to collapse because the version of you they depended on isn't here anymore. 1. The shift begins with exhaustion, then becomes awakening. Every person who reaches emotional detachment comes from the same place. You got tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of overthinking. Tired of carrying both your emotions and theirs. Tired of hoping they'd notice your effort. Tired of trying to decode the mixed signals they still deny giving. At first, it feels like emotional exhaustion. But slowly, subtly, it becomes awakening. The Stoics called it self-regulation. Modern psychology calls it emotional boundaries. But you feel it as something simple. I can't keep doing this to myself. That single realization is the start of your evolution. 2. When the shift happens, your reactions disappear. Before the shift, they controlled the tempo. Their silence made you anxious. Their mood dictated your day. Their inconsistency made you unstable. Their validation decided your self-worth. Buton's clarity lands, your nervous system stops responding in old patterns. Suddenly, their coldness doesn't trigger you. Their games don't confuse you. Their distance no longer feels like loss. Their inconsistency no longer feels personal. You're still Peta, still respectful, still kind, but you're not accessible the way you used to be. And that shift, that disappearance of your reaction, is something their ego was never prepared to handle, because their power required your reactivity, your attention, your emotional availability. Now, When they pull back, you don't chase. When they get cold, you don't collapse. When they test you with silence, you stay calm. Your lack of reaction says everything. You no longer have control here. 3. You stop making excuses for their behavior before your inner shift. You constantly justify them. They're stressed. They're overwhelmed. They didn't mean it. They're just not good at communicating. They'll be better when things calm down. But now your silence isn't just the absence of talking. It's the absence of denial. You finally see the patterns for what they are. Emotional manipulation, lack of accountability, inconsistent affection, ego-driven behavior, psychological testing, control masked as distance. Your silence says, I see what you are doing, and I'm not playing anymore. And once you stop making excuses for someone, the illusion they lived inside begins to break. 4. Your energy becomes impossible for them to access. There's a very specific shift that terrifies fragile egos. When the person they took for granted becomes emotionally self-sufficient, they were used to accessing your empathy, forgiveness, attention, reassurance, emotional labor, endless second chances. They expected you to always be available no matter how they treated you. But after the shift, your energy becomes selective, guarded, reserved for people who reciprocate, not people who drain you. You don't slam the door. You simply remove the open 24/7 sign from your soul. And suddenly you feel it. Your warmth isn't automatic. Your reassurance isn't guaranteed. Your compassion isn't free anymore. This is the moment your silence transforms into power. Not because you're punishing them, but because you finally stop punishing yourself. 5. They sense the emotional detachment before they understand it. Even if they pretend not to notice, even if they act unfazed outwardly, they feel the shift internally. They feel it in your delayed replies, your calm tone, your new boundaries, your emotional neutrality, your lack of reaction to their games, your refusal to match their inconsistency. They don't have the vocabulary to describe it, but they feel something slipping. And nothing shakes an ego faster than sensing they're losing access to someone they assumed would always be there. Because ego isn't afraid of losing love. It's afraid of losing control. 6. The moment you choose yourself, the dynamic flips. The moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep them. The moment you stop treating their needs as more important than yours. The moment you stop betraying your own emotional truth, everything flips. You're no longer centered around their mood. You're centered around your peace. You're no longer controlled by their distance. You're anchored in your self-worth. You're no longer trying to be enough for them. You're becoming enough for yourself. This is the moment your silence stops looking like passivity and starts looking like inner discipline. You rise quietly, steadily, without warning, and they feel that rise before they ever see it. 7. Your silence becomes the turning point they never expected. Here's the truth. People don't fear losing you. They fear losing the version of you who tolerated what they did. When you reach this chapter, this quiet turning point, you don't need closure. You don't need an apology. You don't need answers. Your silence becomes the answer. Your boundaries become the closure. Your self-rest becomes the ending. You don't announce the shift. You embody it. And that embodiment, calm, confident, unbothered, is what begins to break their ego from within. Not because you wanted revenge, but because you finally chose yourself. There comes a moment when your silence stops being a phase and becomes a mirror. Not a mirror that reflects your weakness, but one that forces them to confront their own. Because silence doesn't just create distance. It creates clarity. It strips away illusions. It dismantles the false narrative they used to hide behind. And for someone whose ego depended on confusion, that clarity is devastating. 1. Your silence exposes the fear behind their confidence to the outside world. They look unbothered, calm, detached, in control. But your silence shakes them from the inside. Because when the person who once explained everything stops explaining anything, when the person who used to react stops reacting entirely, their confidence starts to crumble. Why? Because their confidence was never real. It was performance, a mask, a script designed to keep you doubting yourself while convincing them they were above you. Your silence ruins the script. Suddenly, they have no guide to follow, no predictable reaction to rely on, no emotional leverage to exploit. Their confidence collapses because it had nothing to stand on. You were the foundation. 2. Silence shows you what their words never will. Words are easy. People can perform sincerity. They can mimic empathy. They can imitate interest. But silence reveals their truth faster than anything else. Watch what happens when you stop talking. If they cared only about control, they get angry. If they cared only about attention, they disappear. If they cared only about validation, they grow cold. If they cared genuinely, they stay consistent. Your silence separates the real from the fake. It exposes who they are without the convenience of your energy. Suddenly, the stories they told themselves don't hold up. Suddenly, the narrative they use to justify their behavior doesn't make sense. Suddenly, they're forced to see the truth. You always sensed but never spoke. Silence is the ultimate truth serum, and it works without a single word. 3. Your silence reveals how dependent they actually were. Here's the irony. The person who acted like they didn't need you was actually the one most dependent on you. Not your love, your emotional labor, your forgiveness, your stability, your patience, your reassurance, your willingness to carry both sides off connection. When you pull that energy back, when you reclaim what was always yours, it exposes a truth. Ego-driven people never want to admit they were leaning on you. The entire time, and your silence makes them feel emptiness they've been hiding from behind bravado. This is why they panic. Not because you're gone, but because your absence reveals their fragility in a way your presence never did. 4. Silence reveals their emotional immaturity. Emotional maturity is revealed not in how people speak, but in how they handle silence. Some people respond with understanding. Some respond with patience. Some respond with respect. But emotionally immature people, they respond with sudden anger, guilt-tripping, passive aggression, coldness, drama, manipulation, disappearing, acts, panic, masked as indifference. Your silence triggers every insecurity they've spent years suppressing. It exposes their inability to communicate. It highlights how little emotional depth they truly have. They didn't expect your silence to be so calm, so grounded, so unshakable. That calm is what breaks them because it reminds them that they never had power over you. They only had power over your reactions. 5. Silence reveals the gap between your growth and theirs. Some people stop growing at 15 emotionally, but keep aging physically. Your silence rooted in emotion. Suddenly they see you've grown. You've evolved. You've outgrown the patterns they're still repeating. You've built psychological boundaries they don't know how to navigate. You've developed self-worth they were hoping you'd never find. Your silence reveals your evolution and their stagnation. And nothing threatens a fragile ego more than realizing someone they thought they were above has outgrown them completely. 6. Silence forces responsibility onto them. When you no longer engage, you no longer cushion their mistakes. You no longer absorb their emotional case. You no longer rescue them from the consequences of their actions. First time, they have to sit with what they've done with no distraction, nor argument, no scapegoat. Your silence forces them to look inward, something ego-driven people avoid at all costs. Because silence is accountability, not the kind you force, the kind they feel. It's the moment they replay everything, every message they ignored, every moment they took you for granted, every effort they dismissed, every boundary they crossed, every time they confused your patience with their power. Silence doesn't punish. It reveals. 7. silence exposes the truth they feared all along. You changed and you're not going back. This is the realization that hits the hardest. Not that you're angry, not that you're hurt, not that you're distant, but that you're different. You've shifted. You've grown. You've elevated beyond their reach. The version of you they manipulated, tested, controlled, and underestimated no longer exists. Your silence communicates what words. Never could. I'm not afraid to lose you. I'm afraid to lose myself. And that truth, that shift, that evolution, it's what shatters their ego more than anything you could ever say. There is a moment in every silent transformation, and your detachment stops looking like distance and starts looking like power, not the loud kind, not the vengeful kind, not the kind that tries to prove anything, but the kind that comes from deep, unshakable inner peace. The kind-off strength that can't be manipulated, guilt-tripped, or pulled back into chaos. This is the phase where your silence stops being a reaction and becomes identity. And to someone whose ego depended on your emotional availability, this shift feels like a threat. They can't name but can't escape. One attachment shows them you're no longer emotionally grabbable. Everyone who tried to control you did it through emotions. Your empathy, your softness, your desire for harmony. The moment you detach emotionally, that power collapses. You're no longer moved by their mood swings. You're no longer activated by their silence. You're no longer triggered by their distance. You're no longer fooled by their sudden warmth. Nothing they dapples you in the way it used to. To them, it feels like their bait no longer works. Their games no longer land. Their silence no longer intimidates. Their inconsistency no longer destabilizes you. Your emotional detachment turns their psychological tactics into noise. Background noise. You don't even flink it, and the ego hates when its tricks stop working. 2. Your focus shifts back to yourself, and they feel the loss of relevance. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop abandoning yourself. You start investing your energy into your goals, your growth, your peace, your spiritual discipline, your emotional intelligence, your high-performance mindset. And what they feel on the other side is the quiet, humiliating truth. They're no longer the center of your world. Your attention is to be a currency, a stabilizer, a source of ego supply. When you take it back, it leaves an emotional vacuum they weren't prepared to face. It's not that you disappeared, it's that you reappeared in your own life. And nothing insults a fragile ego more than realizing you've chosen yourself. 3. Detachment shifts the dynamic without you speaking a single word. Most people try to fix a relationship through arguments, long conversations, endless explanations. But emotional detachment communicates a message they were never willing to hear. Your behavior has consequences. You don't say it. You don't announce it. You don't warn them. You become it. Your tone changes. Your availability shifts. Your energy becomes selective. Your presence becomes earned, not given. And the person who once felt superior now feels off balance. Not because you punished them, but because you stopped participating in the dynamic that kept their ego inflated. This is the beginning of psychological equality, and equality feels like a threat to someone who fed on the imbalance. 4. Detachment exposes their lack of emotional discipline. They were comfortable when you were the emotional one, the expressive one, the forgiven gone, the soft one. But now you're calm, you're steady, you're self-controlled. You're emotionally unshakable. Your silence becomes the loudest form of discipline, and it highlights their lack of it. They act out. They lash out. They withdraw. They poke. They test. They do anything to feel powerful again. But nothing gets the reaction they want because your detachment isn't passive. It's mastery. You're not suppressing emotions. You're directing them. You're not avoiding connection. You're alleviating your standards. You're not shutting down. You're tuning into yourself, not to their chaos. This level of emotional discipline exposes how little control they have over their own inner world. 5. Detachment turns your presence into something rare. And rarity is powerful. People don't value what's always available. People don't respect what's always forgiving. People don't appreciate what's always accessible. Your emotional detachment shifts you from always there, selectively there, predictably, unpredictably, easy to reach, impossible to control. Suddenly, you're not an option. You're a privilege. Your presence becomes something they notice, something they miss, something they chase. Not because you're replaying games, but because you finally understand your worth. Detachment restores the value they tried to diminish. 6. Detachment ends the cycle they thought would last forever. Every toxic dynamic relies on one assumption. You won't leave. Not physically, emotionally, but when you detach. When you stop feeding the cycle, when you no longer react, chase, or explain, you break the spell. That's why it feels terrifying on their end, because you were glue holding everything together. You were the emotional stabilizer. You were the source of connection. Once you withdraw that energy, the dynamic collapses. They finally understand something their ego hid from them. You were the connection. You weareth depth. You were the emotional foundation. You were the strength. They weren't in control. They were being carried. And now you're no longer carrying them. 7. Your detachment sends a message they can't run from. You no longer have access to the emotional version of me. This is the moment that breaks them. Not silence, not the distance, not the lack of reaction, but the truth behind it. You outgrew the version of yourself they depended on. You're no longer emotionally open on demand. You're no longer available for manipulation. You're no longer offering reassurance to someone who gave you confusion. You're no longer carrying a connection they refuse to nurture. Your detachment says, I choose peace over chaos. I choose clarity over confusion. I choose myself over your ego. And that's the moment they feel the collapse. Because nothing is more threatening to someone with an unstable ego than losing the person who once held them together. When someone senses their ego slipping, their first instinct is not to apologize. It's not to reflect. It's not to grow. It's to test you. Not consciously, not logically, but instinctively as a survival reflex. Because the moment you shift into emotional clarity, the moment you reclaim your inner world, the moment your silence becomes consistent and grounded, their ego receives the message. Your old power here is gone. That's when the testing begins. And here's the truth. Most people don't realize their tests don't reveal your weakness. They reveal their Sony. The first test they try what used to work before. People with unstable egos rely on patterns, not emotional intelligence. So when your silence disturbs them, they reach for the old tools. You'll see it in small ways. A passive-aggressive comment, a delayed reply meant to trigger insecurity, a sudden disappearance, a random breadcrumb message, an unexpected warm tone, then cold again, a question designed to pull you back into explaining yourself. These aren't accidents. They're survival mechanisms, because if the old tactic still works, it means they still have emotional leverage. But when you don't react, when you don't chase, don't explain, don't panic, don't ask questions, the ego realizes something terrifying. You've outgrown the version of yourself they were prepared to manipulate. This is where the first internal crack forms. 2. The second test. They create a confusion to regain control. Confusion is their favorite weapon. Not because they're strategic, but because confused people are easier to influence. They may suddenly shift from warm to cold, or act like nothing is wrong, or pretend they're the one distancing. Now the goal is simple. Make you question your clarity. Make you question your boundary. Make you question your decision. Because once you start doubting yourself, you're back in their world. but you've changed. You can now see the emotional games for what they are. A desperate attempt to avoid losing the upper hand. Your silence becomes a shield. Your calm becomes a filter. Your inner peace becomes resistance. And nothing scares an ego more than someone who no longer needs chaos to feel alive. 3. The third test. They poke at your emotions to see if you still care. Most people don't understand this part, but manipulation always comes disguised as concern or checking in or just wanted to ask. But the intention isn't connection. It's measurement. They're not trying to reconnect. They're trying to see. Can they still make you angry? Can they still make you anxious? Can they still make you explain? Can they still make you react? Can they still make you feel responsible for their moods? This is how insecure egos test relevance, because if they can still affect your emotions, they still matter. But when you stay grounded, when your responses are minimal, calm, detached, when your energy stays neutral, you deliver a message without speaking. You don't have emotional access to me anymore. And that's a message the ego is never ready to receive. 4. The fourth test. They try to provoke the old you, and here's where the panic begins. When confusion doesn't work, when manipulation doesn't work, when emotional poking doesn't work, they reach for the last tactic: provocation. They may criticize you, dismiss you, accuse you, mock you, bring up old wounds. Use guilt, use silence, ooze a distance. Anything to break your calm and resurrect the version of you that reacted emotionally, because that version of you was easier to control. But when you stay unshaken, when you answer with clarity instead of emotion, when you choose peace over reaction, when you hold your psychological boundaries effortlessly, they don't just lose control of the situation. They lose control of themselves, because provoking someone who no longer plays game turns the mirror back on them, and the ego can't handle its own reflection. 5. The fifth test. They try to reconnect on their terms when all else fails. They often try a soft approach, a friendly message, a compliment, a memory, an apology that isn't actually an apology, a vague, "How have you been?" a breadcrumb of warmth. But this isn't genuine reconciliation. This is ego maintenance. They're not trying to rebuild connection. They're trying to confirm that they still have access to your emotional space. But your silence has changed you too deeply. You no longer respond to minimal effort. You no longer word inconsistency. You no longer bend your boundaries for temporary warmth. Your emotional detente has matured into discernment. And this unsettles them more than anger ever could. 6. The sixth test. They're treat to see if you'll chase. This is where the pattern flips entirely. The person who once used distance as a weapon now uses it as a test. They pull away not because they're busy, not because they're healed, but because they're watching you. They want to see, will you panic? Will you reach out? Will you break your silence? Will you try to fix it? But when you don't chase, when you don't break your peace, when you didn't collapse like before, they face the crushing truth. You never needed them. You needed clarity. And now that you have it, their distance does nothing to you. This is the moment their ego truly trembles because the dynamic has reversed. They're the one waiting. They're the only overthinking. They're the one feeling unbalanced. Not because you punished them, but because you evolved. 7. The final test. They try to resurrect the old version of the relationship. When they sense they're losing you completely, they reach for desperation disguised as change efficient, sudden promises, sudden effort, sudden emotional honesty, sudden interest in your life, sudden vulnerability. Not because they've transformed, but because they're terrified. Terrified of losing access to the emotional strength they didn't appreciate when they had it. But you've reached a level of self-worth they can't imitate, manipulate, or interrupt. So when they try to resurrect the old dynamic, they discover something devastating. That version of you no longer exists. Your silence has become clarity. Your boundaries have become identity. Your emotional intelligence has become murmur. Your inner peace has become power. They're not facing the old you anymore. They're facing the healed you. And no ego survives that encounter unchanged. There comes a moment in every silent evolution when something inside you shifts so deeply so that the other person can feel it without you saying a single word. It isn't anger. It isn't revenge. It isn't bitterness. It's clarity. Pure, grounded, unshakable clarity. And clarity is the one thing an ego cannot survive, because once you see the truth, you can no longer be controlled by the illusion. This chapter is about that moment. The moment your silence stops being a reaction and becomes an identity. The moment your peace stops being fragile and becomes your weapon. The moment they feel deep in their chest that the version of you they fed on isn't coming back. This is when your clarity becomes their collapse. One clarity strips away their emotional fog. Ego-driven people operate best when you're confused, when you're wondering, doubting, analyzing, overthinking, interpreting mixed signals, trying to decode their coldness. Confusion gives them power. But when your silence helps you see their inconsistency wasn't mystery, it was manipulation. Their distance wasn't depth. It weighs insecurity. Their indifference wasn't strength, it was fear. Their mixed signals weren't complexity. They were control. Everything changes. You stop seeing potential. You start seeing patterns. You stop seeing chemistry. You start seeing chaos. You stop seeing a soulmate. You start seeing a strategy. And the moment you see clearly, their old tactics lose effect. Your clarity breaks the psychological spell they relied on. And nothing shatters an ego faster than losing the ability to confuse someone they once controlled with ease. 2. Clarity breaks their illusion of superiority. For a long time they believed they were above you, more wanted, more valued, more important, more powerful. They thought you'll always chase. You'll always explain. You'll always need me more than I need you. You'll always come back. But when your silence turns into calm emotional detente, when you start responding from wisdom instead of wounds, when you choose yourself with a confidence they never expected, their illusion collapses, not slowly, not softly, but brutally, because the truth hits them for the first time. You were the stable one. You were the anchor. You were the emotional leader. You were the valuable one in the connection, not them. Clarity reveals the real power dynamic, and it was never in their favor. 3. Clarity exposes their emotional dependence. They spent so long acting like they didn't need you, like they were above caring, above feeling, above losing you. But silence reveals what performance hides. When your reactions disappear, their confidence disappears too. When your validation stops, their self-worth wobbles. When your presence fades, their emotional stability shakes. They start checking your profile, rereading old messages, stalking your silence, analyzing things you're not even doing, feeling the absence like a weight on their chest because clarity has flipped the script. They don't know who they are without being the one you struggle to understand. Your clarity exposes the truth. They needed your attention far more than you ever needed their presence. 4. Clarity makes you unpredictable, and that terrifies them. Egos depend on predictable reactions. They need to know. If they pull back, you'll chase. If they criticize, you'll explain. If they ignore you, you'll worry. If they go cold, you'll fold. But clarity rewires everything. When you're no longer reacting from insecurity, when you're grounded in emotional intelligence, when you choose self-worth over approval, you become unpredictable, not unstable, unreachable, not reactive, resolved, not emotional, elevated. And this destroys the ego because egos cannot fight what they cannot predict. 5. Clarity ends the version of you they relied on. The moment you stop breaking yourself to keep the peace, the moment you stop handing over your emotional energy for free, The moment your silence becomes your boundary, they face the truth. The version of you they could control has died. And the version of you standing here now doesn't need them, want them, or fear losing them. This is the collapse. Not because you punished them, not because you attacked them, not because you sought revenge, but because healing yourself forced them to face themselves. Your clarity becomes the mirror they spent their whole life running from. And when they finally see their reflection with your reassurance to soften it, their ego breaks in silence exactly the way they never expected. You didn't win because you were louder. You won because you became wiser. You didn't rise because they hurt you. You rose because you refused to shrink your soul to fit someone else's chaos. And now look at you steady grounded. Your silence is no longer hiding pain. It's revealing your power. Your boundaries are no longer reactions. They're expressions of self-worth. Your emotional clarity is no longer fragile. It's the mark of a high-performance man driven by inner peace and emotional intelligence. This is what they never expected, you healing quietly, rising internally and rebuilding the parts of yourself you thought would stay broken. They felt your silence. They felt the shift. They felt the collapse of the illusion they used to rely on. But you felt something deeper. You felt yourself returning home to your strength, to your clarity, to your inner power that no one can touch again. And now your silence isn't just a reaction. It's a lifestyle, a standard, a form of self-respect that speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. This is who you are now, someone whose absence teaches more than their presence ever had to explain. Someone who rises without noise, protects their peace without apology, and commands respect without saying a single word. This is quiet dominance. This is psychological mastery. This is Stoic power in motion.